Hi there, North Dakota District. This is Pastor Matt Richard from the Planting of Churches, the Task Force for Planting of Churches and Revitalization of Churches in the North Dakota District. And we have our monthly Google Hangouts. And this month we have Peter Slayton with us. Peter is the LCMS Director for Social Media at the International Center in St. Louis. And so I wanted to have a hangout where we could talk about social media, the intricacies of it, the blessings, and maybe some of the consequences of it, and also just cover some of the basic 101, social media 101. And so we got Peter with us here for the next half hour. Thank you for being here with us, Peter.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for the promotion. I'm actually a manager, not a director, but I'll
Okay,
take
okay,
it.
yeah. So LCMS Social Media Manager, right?
Yep. It's like
So,
herding cats. I don't direct
okay.
them, I just try and manage them.
So my understanding of your position, just to help people understand it, anything and everything that kind of comes through the social media with the LCMS, which would be like Facebook and Twitter, that all goes through you. Is that correct?
Yeah, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are our three primary platforms that we use, and I manage the content for all of those, everything from creating original content to go out or highlighting the important things that are going on and making sure we're pushing out news updates. We kind of have four categories of things that we look at. We have devotional type posts. So you'll see each weekend we post the prayers of the church, the hymn of the day, the liturgy for the Sunday service. Those are some of our most popular posts. They're really fantastic to see our church just really drinking in God's word in that way. We have global Christian news or global news where we want to highlight things going on in the world. We like to point out maybe it's not being covered by the national media very well, maybe it is, and we're just adding a Christian perspective to it. We also like to post things about teaching, catechizing, helping teach the church, confessing what we believe, why we believe it, that sort of thing. And then we have a few more cultural, maybe political kind of topics that we're focusing on right now. So marriage, abortion, religious freedom are three of the really big ones that we tend to
Hmm.
post on. So I'm in charge of kind of figuring out what gets posted when, if there's something current going on, big event going on globally, making sure that we're on top of speaking to it if it's appropriate for us to do so, and how we go about doing that. So
Right.
there's a great team here, so we work really well together. So I don't have to do it by myself, but I'm
Okay.
usually the one who hits publish.
Nice. Now, I noticed I went to the LCMS Facebook page and I noticed it was like 113,000 followers on that.
Yep. Yeah, we
Okay.
just crossed 113,000 this last week of Holy Week. We actually gained about 3,000 new likes or followers, however you want to talk about that number. Is really fantastic to see the growth happening over Holy Week, which is fantastic because pretty much everything we posted during Holy Week was devotion related, liturgy
Right.
related, the church year related, and so it's wonderful to see the audience grow as we're posting those sorts of things.
That's great. That's great. So we have Twitter, we have Facebook, and we have Instagram. Now, what I'd like to do here is just kind of handle this from a perspective of, like I said, a social media 101. So
Hmm.
let's just start by, maybe explaining what are all the different social media venues or products or services out there to use. I know we mentioned Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, but just real briefly, if you can, maybe 15 seconds on each one, name each one, and then just a snapshot of what each one is about, just to kind of give
Sure.
everyone a synopsis.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely not going to list all of them because there are so many out there, but I'll kind of go through the bigger ones that a lot of people are using, and not all of them are ones that the LCMS is currently using. So our three main ones that we use the most, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Facebook, everybody's on Facebook, 1.6 billion monthly active users. So that means there's 1.5 billion people on Facebook at least once a month doing something in one way or another on Facebook. So it's the platform where you can get pictures, you can do video, you can blog, you can have pretty much every communication tool at your disposal on Facebook with the potential for a massive audience. Twitter, you've got you got limits on Twitter. So Twitter tends to be very public, and you're limited in the amounts that you can post. It's 140 characters, so the whole point is short, to pithy, to the point. And Twitter is really good for that in the now. immediate news kind of thing going on. So here's what's going on right now. Let me share some quick thoughts, quick updates, quotes about something going on right now. Instagram is great for visual storytelling. You have two options. You can either post pictures or you can do a 15-second video through the app. I like to refer to Instagram as being militantly mobile because they really want you to be posting from your smartphone or your iPad tablet kind of thing, and they lock out all options for posting through a desktop sort of thing. So they want it to be mobile. They're very intentional about that. And so Instagram users tend to be pretty passionate. If they're active, they develop a really tight community around visual storytelling. Snapchat is huge. It's not something that we use here at the LCMS. It's really, in terms of like an organization, a church, how they would use it, what I've heard and what I've read about as I've researched it is it's good for storytelling, short form storytelling. So throughout the day, you would post several things to tell a story, communicate a particular thing to your audience. Snapchats, hopefully I'm using that term right, they disappear. It's not something like in Twitter or Facebook or Instagram where you post something and it sticks around. Snapchat disappears. So it's very much even more in the moment, of course, than Twitter is, because what you're posting.
Are you there, Peter? I think we just lost you. Yep, we just lost you. Let's see if we can get him back here. We will wait just one second to see if we can get him back. So we're talking about the different social media platforms. We're talking about when it comes to Facebook, it comes to Twitter and Instagram, and then we're also talking about using of Snapchat. Let's see if we can get him back here. Well, we will try here one more time here to get him back for us. So it might be the internet connection all the way here to Gwinner, North Dakota. Yep, he just signed off, so we'll wait for him to sign on. Looks like he's signing on here again.
Oh, sorry, we lost the connection there.
Yep. So, good. Yeah, no, I did some good fill there, you know, as a good news announcer. So yeah.
All right, when did we cut off?
I might have a good future if the pastor gig doesn't work out. I can do news announcing.
All of a sudden, it disappeared. When did I cut off?
You were just talking about Snapchat there, and you were talking about Snapchat that they're pithy comments that are made, and they're not kept on there. They actually go away. They're not saved on some sort of online. So it's just basically in the moment, right? You say it, and then it disappears.
Yeah, short form storytelling. So it's pretty visual. You're telling a story through pictures, and you're getting your audience right then, and then it disappears. I also mentioned LinkedIn. Not many churches will probably jump onto LinkedIn. There's not a huge call for that. It is a professional networking social network, very much oriented towards business. And anytime you try and tell anybody on LinkedIn what you had for breakfast, everybody yells at you and says, "This isn't Twitter." So I think those are probably the bigger ones right now. I mean, there's a lot more out there, but the majority of people, unless you're one of those hardcore users who just got upset that I didn't mention your particular favorite social network, the majority of people are going to be on those ones right now.
Nice. So we talked about basically the big three that the LCMS is involved with is Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Those are the three that I use. I think both you and I are on all those, and I do have a Snapchat that some of the youth set up for me, and I use from time to time. But those big three are the ones that I use, and they can kind of you can intertwine them together so they kind of can bounce off each other and work. Let's talk about this here real quick. Should a church be involved in social media? Why or why not? Now, I want us to set the context, what you're speaking to, just for other viewers of this. We're speaking to the North Dakota district. So the average church in the North Dakota district is anywhere from 30 people to up to 150 people on a Sunday. And so we're not talking like huge mega churches. I think there are a couple churches in the North Dakota district that are push about 500 a Sunday, but that is in the minority. So we're speaking to the average, farm community here in North Dakota. Should they use social media? Should they use Facebook or Twitter or Instagram? And if they should use it, which one would you recommend, kind of start with?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question, especially for a church like that. My wife grew up in a smaller country church, 150 to 300 people. And so when I first started using social media, that's the kind of church we were attending. So I very much relate to that. usually with churches, the things that they're thinking about is advertising events, letting people know what's going on, in the congregation and that kind of stuff. I think for those two reasons, smaller churches tend to have their own well-established communication lines of communication to cover that kind of information. Where I think social media can be helpful for a church like that would be, in a sense, what else is going on? How do we connect to the larger church? So there are fantastic resources out there. As a pastor, if you're wanting to catechize your confirmants, you're going through confirmation class, and there are wonderful resources out there on social media that you could potentially set up a group for your confirmants where you as the pastor are sharing specific articles or videos or podcasts that you find would be helpful, and you want to share them with your confirmants and help teach them. So there's lots of ways to supplement the catechesis of your congregation. It's a fantastic tool for that. Facebook is probably the best platform to use for that sort of thing, because of the potential for private conversations, keeping it within the group, and it's not like a public broadcast to everybody. So I mean, that's one use that churches can have. If you want your church to be more known within the community or other surrounding communities, Facebook can be a good way to do that. Maybe your church has its own established internal communications network for how to let people know about events, and church gets snowed in or something like that. So there, services end up being canceled because there's 8 feet of snow covering the front door. But the local community obviously isn't going to be tied into those networks. And so having Facebook can be a great one for that. I tend to gravitate towards Facebook for these sorts of things only because it's easier to use. You have so many more tools available to you. You've got lots of privacy settings available in terms of who can see what and controlling the information and where it goes and that sort of stuff. So for most of these, I'm probably going to end up recommending at least starting with Facebook and then kind of go out from there. But there are opportunities to let your community know who you are, what you're doing. Give that good confession out in public through social media. It's really a fantastic tool for doing that. Yeah, what other kinds of, Matt, I know you use it a little bit for your church too, so maybe we could talk about that also.
Yeah, one of the things that I found that we have Facebook for Zion Lutheran here in Gwinner, and one of the things that I've had to make sure to communicate, especially to some of our prime timers, our older individuals in our church. I think of a particular couple specifically. They're not on Facebook. They have no interest. They use email. They do use internet and so forth, but they just said, you know what? We just don't have the ambition and the desire to get into Facebook. Which I said, hey, I totally understand. But then they were very, very fearful that they were losing out on part of the community and the communication of what was going on. And I was very, very clear to communicate to them that no, what we're putting on Facebook is above and beyond. You're getting all the information through the newsletter and the bulletins and the word of mouth. This is just another way to communicate to people in the community, and also those that maybe don't lean as heavily upon the newsletters as you do, or the word of mouth. And so
Sure.
it's really to plug those who have their phones, to link them in, keep them communicating. So I guess the way I see it, kind of what you're mentioning is something that's done above and beyond what's already existing in the church, for the sake of maybe reaching some of those younger individuals who maybe are not as prone to use the bulletin and the newsletter and the word of mouth, as well as those in the rest of the community who are either connected informally to the church or are interested in attending the church. So it's above and beyond. So I think that kind of helps from that perspective.
I always like to say that social media doesn't replace what you're already doing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Augments
That's a good point.
Just because the phone was invented, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden people stop talking to each other face to face. Which
Right.
apparently, you go back and read historical, freakouts about that. That's what people were worried about. This phone coming into houses. It's not just the telegraph anymore that only certain people can use. It's the phone. Nobody's ever going to want to talk to each other face to face anymore. We got the phone. So social media is kind of like that. It doesn't replace your print publications. It doesn't replace your church bulletin. It doesn't replace your church websites. Any other of those things that you have, it doesn't replace any of them. The best use of social media is to integrate it in those channels and reach out to those places where, okay, your print publication maybe people aren't reading it. Not everybody's reading it. Some people are, some people aren't. Well, those people who aren't reading it probably would read something if it was on social media. And so you're using it to reach that new audience that you might not already be reaching without dropping your current audience. So yeah,
Right.
that's what I say. You do it. Yeah, I already answered that.
Yep. Yeah. So
I start repeating
kind of,
myself. If I start repeating
yeah.
myself, just cut me off. Totally
No,
fine.
that's good. So you've kind of already hit on this. My next question for you is, if a church should be on social media, which we're kind of establishing that, to do it, you're not necessarily replacing anything. You're not replacing the newsletter. You're not replacing the bulletin. You're not replacing the word of mouth. It's just another dimension of communication for people in the church and community. So with that said, you were mentioning here as far as which platform to work with, which social media, and I think you were hitting briefly upon Facebook due to the privacy settings. Was that where you would recommend? And another thing too is are some of these social medias more popular in different sections of United States? I mean, is the Midwest more prone to Twitter or Facebook or Instagram?
Yeah, I think in terms of demographics, Facebook has everybody. Grandparents are now on Facebook because they realize that their grandkids' pictures are on Facebook and they're no longer getting printed and mailed to them.
Mm-hmm.
So that demographic is one of the faster growing demographics on Facebook. Kids, as a response, your 13 to 25-year-olds, um, there isn't a growth on Facebook where like they're all joining. Like I said, they are using Snapchat. A lot of them are on Instagram. They love Instagram. So if you're trying to reach that audience specifically, those two platforms might be the most effective. However, most of the kids will still have Facebook. So Facebook covers everybody. Its audience and its potential reach far outstrips anything else. I mean, nobody else is even close. Twitter, I believe last time I checked, was 400 million users, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's the closest. So
Right. Right.
usually on Twitter, several million to Facebook, 1.6 billion. I mean, there's just
Right. Right.
no comparison. So I think really, yes, the demographic who you're trying to reach is important, but I think for most churches, probably the bigger factor is going to be time.
Right.
How much
Right.
time do we have to invest? Because we're not replacing something with social media, we are adding to it. That means we've got to carve out time to do this thing, to create these posts, to figure out what we want to put up there. And so one of the reasons, again, I gravitate towards Facebook is simply, well, if you got to pick one, pick the platform that has everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Pick the platform where you can do pictures, where you can do video, where you can create private groups, where you can have a public page, where you can do all these different things and communicate in many different ways. And stick with that one if time is the biggest factor, because if you've got to manage multiple ones, you'll end up not doing any of them well, and you get frustrated. You just
Right.
don't have time.
Right.
So I think I would say as a church, look at time first before you look at which demographic do we want to reach, because especially if you're saying really we want to reach the youth, okay, then you need to use Snapchat, and that's going to be way more time consuming than anything
Mm-hmm.
else. So you've got to
Right.
make sure you're prepared to dedicate the time to do that short form storytelling and to do that immediate interaction, or your audience is just going to miss it.
Right. So when you're saying Facebook here, let's just kind of capture and say putting posts of pictures and so forth. So like one thing, we had a person's 95th birthday, Ruth, and so we made sure to take pictures of Ruth and we put those pictures up online. I know I've done shut-in visits and I've taken my shut-ins. I said we're going to do a selfie, and I remember Lloyd, one of our dear saints, he just passed away. I just miss him dearly. But I said, Lloyd, we're going to do a selfie. And he said, what's that? And I held it out like this. And he's looking at this camera, looking at my phone. He's like, how did I get inside that? I said, smile. And we smiled. But by taking a couple selfies with the shut-ins, I posted them online. And it was a way to communicate that these people are our saints. They are our beloved saints, and they're shut in. And they're still a part of our flock. They're still a part of who we are as a church. And it was really quite amazing to see everyone's like, oh man, I haven't thought of them. I need to go pay them a visit and so forth.
Yeah.
So really it functions to take pictures of the life of the church and get that out. And then there's another aspect too, that you're hitting, that you're doing right now, is it's the posting of devotions and so forth. You can get your sermons out online. You can get devotionals, articles that are pertinent out to your congregation, and also those in the community who maybe see your church in their news feed as things come up. They'll see things from a Missouri Synod perspective. Am I capturing that all correctly?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a fantastic use of the selfie, first of all. I love that idea because social media is about building community. And I think one of the biggest complaints that people have is social media isn't real. And yes, as far as that statement goes, social media is not real life. It's not that face-to-face relational interaction with somebody. But like the phone call, picking up the phone and talking to somebody over the phone, yes, it's not face-to-face, but that's an important part of communication. It does build relationships. Social media can be done the same way, and I love how you're using it in that way to build up the community of the church, to enhance the life of the church, helping people not forget the shut-ins and those who aren't there on a daily basis, and using it. And I love that usage of it. And then, like you mentioned, I'm also using it to teach. So you have those opportunities to put the liturgy out. One of the things that we've seen over and over every single week, we'll have at least one, maybe a dozen comments. Thank you for posting this. I got sick. I'm in the hospital this week. I couldn't make it to church.
Yep.
Thank you for this hymn. This is my favorite hymn. You know, so and so sang it to me when I was heading to bed every night. You know, my grandmother used to sing this to me. I love this hymn. You know, and seeing those connections. And when you have those kinds of interactions online, that builds a real, legitimate community. Yes, it's not face to face. It's different. I think the problem comes is when people only have that social media and they don't have any other real relationships with those individuals. That can be problematic. You know, that's where it's like, okay, now I'm taking this too seriously because I'm treating this as if it is real life and everything. And so that's, you know, God has given us many gifts and they can all be abused. That would be an abuse of the wonderful first article gift of social media.
You hit an interesting point here. I mean, that the message of the gospel, the law and gospel, the message of the word that is preached in the church and preached by the pastors and those in Christ's church, that can actually extend into those hospitals through something such as just, you know, like what I have right here, my smartphone, you know, and I mean, and I'm amazed. I'm absolutely amazed. Like my mother, I love my mother. She's in her mid 70s, early 70s, we'll say early 70s, and she has just been against the computer, and so she got a smartphone with my dad, and she's on Facebook all the time. And so I know she's gonna watch. I'm not gonna say anything, so I'm gonna mention to her right now because I know she'll see this. She'll say, "Oh, it's my little boy who's on the TV screen of YouTube." So she'll watch it, and even hers. I mean, I'm amazed of like what you said, the very vast spans of individuals that are on there that use it even to some degree during the month to communicate and to hear and to have that community. So yeah, those are very important. We've been talking about some of the benefits of it. I have a couple more questions here for you. What are some of the warnings about social media? You know, is there an underbelly? Are there things so maybe a church that is saying, hey, you know, we're not on Facebook. We'd like to get on Facebook. Maybe a pastor says, you know, I'm not on Facebook. I'd like to engage a little bit more in my congregation and community through this means. What are some warnings that they should be cautious of? What are some traps that they can get into that would be, you know, maybe damage the witness of Christ, of the church, you know, the confession of the church?
Sure. There are a couple things that come to mind. I think the two big ones: privacy concerns. That can be a big one in terms of protecting privacy. So I want to talk about that. And then the whole arguments online, internet debates, and I've actually got an article coming out in the next Lutheran Witness about how to kind of approach having discussions online if your goal is to have a productive theological discussion where you actually want to talk about theology in a way that's positive and productive and gives a good confession. So I've got an article coming out in the next Lutheran Witness about that. So the first one, privacy. Facebook, depending on how you set it up, everything might be public where anybody in the whole world can see it. Or you can set it up so that things are a little more private. You know, if you're going with a group for your church, you can lock down the group, you can make it closed, only people who you approve can join, you know, and only people who are in the group can see the posts and that kind of stuff. Twitter is similar. It's also not similar to that. Twitter is public. If you have a Twitter profile, unless you've locked yours down, which if you're going to use Twitter, I don't recommend doing that because that kind of defeats the whole point of Twitter. So you're going to have a public profile where everything you post is public. Instagram is very similar to that, generally public. You can close it down, but if you're trying to reach people, there's really there's really no point in doing that. It's not going to be an effective tool. So churches, you're posting pictures of your Easter egg hunt or your if you do a children's sermon or something like that, and you've got kids that you're posting, you just want to be careful. If you're in a private group, that's great. If it's just for the church members, local community, everybody knows everybody, that's fine. But if you're posting pictures of kids and you're naming the children, and all of a sudden those are things, there are internet predators out there who are looking for this kind of stuff where they might identify, oh, here's the kid, they go to that church, it's a small town, I know where they are. You know, it's just being aware of that sort of stuff, being careful how you post. Not that we have to fear this, and not that we have to really, well, you know, you do have some people who say, I'm never going to use my kids' names online. I'm never posting pictures of them ever. So that's the privacy concern is a legitimate one. It's one to consider as a congregation, how you're going to talk about your members, your parishioners, and how you're going to go about doing that sort of stuff. And then I think in terms of the positive confession, giving a good confession online, well, let's take baptism. That's a good example to start with. If you're catechizing, you want to use your Facebook page to teach your congregation, to share good resources with them, or your Twitter feed or Instagram. And so you post an article on baptism. I guarantee you, depending on how far your reach is, what kinds of people are seeing your posts, somebody is going to yell at you that baptism doesn't save. It's going to happen. Whether it's a family member of one of your parishioners, maybe they're not Lutheran, they're not Christian, or they're an American evangelical, or any number of things like that. There are certain topics where no matter what you do, somebody's going to get mad and start an argument with you. Baptism tends to be one of those. The Lord's Supper can be another one. And so be prepared when those things happen to give a loving response to those individuals, because you will find very, very angry people on the internet who appear to have lots and lots of time to just yell at you on the internet. And if you're trying to manage your Facebook page and you're just sharing a really great picture of an infant baptism that happened that morning, and you're sharing the joy of, you know, here's a new life in Christ, this person has been saved, this is wonderful, and you've got, as I reference in my Lutheran Witness article, your Baptist uncle who just starts yelling at you. You need to be prepared for that to happen. Because it is.
Can I interrupt with a question here, Peter?
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing, let me speak to this a little bit more. When it comes to speaking online, I guess my experience has been, and even for myself, that I'm more apt to type something bold online with my little fingers behind a profile picture than I would actually say it face to face. So does social media, in a way, does it bring out a sense where we will say things on social media that we would not say face to face in person? Is there a dynamic there?
I think for a lot of people, yes. I think there are people who what you see on social media is what you get in real life, for better or worse. But I do think there is a tendency to be a little more free in what we would say on social media, maybe be a little more confrontational than we would be. I think another part of this too is, I don't know if this is our education system or whatnot, but we have somewhat lost the ability to communicate clearly in writing, to understand tone as people are typing. You know, so this person, they might be typing something they think is perfectly kind and loving, and I read it, and because whether it's my lack of education, my lack of understanding, maybe my relationship with this person isn't, you know, it's only online. I've never met them in real life, so I can't see their face and what they would look like as they're saying this to me. And I think, wow, they're really a jerk. They're really mean.
Yeah.
So I think there's multiple factors there. Yeah, I think we do remove our filters somewhat as we're typing, because this person, they're not sitting across from me. I don't have to deal with them. I can get up and walk away from my computer and let them be angry.
Right,
So I
right.
don't care as much about what I say, maybe. Um, I think we also, and I'm equally guilty of this. I think sometimes I just put the worst construction on what they're saying.
Hmm.
I look at it and say, oh, well, yeah, that's horrible. And maybe they were trying really, really hard to say it well and to say it kindly. And because my natural inclination is just to put the worst construction on it, I'm the one who has now like destroyed the potential for a good discussion, a good dialogue here too. So,
Right.
yeah, I think it's a little bit of all of that. Once again, a good gift from God can definitely be abused.
So with that said, then let's just move to another question here. Is there an etiquette when it comes to social media? I mean, as far as just some brief etiquettes, as far as when you post, for instance, on Facebook, since we're talking about Facebook, is there, for the church, for the average, Christian that's posting on there, do's and don'ts, I guess you would say,
Mhm.
obviously, one, not typing in capital letters all the way across, maybe you can explain that a little bit,
Yeah.
and so forth, so just briefly on that, what are some etiquette rules that you would say that would be for maybe a first-time Facebooker?
Yeah, so I mean that's the all caps one is a good one to start off with. There are certain modes of communication online that communicate certain things. So if you type in all caps, the what you're communicating is that you are yelling, or at least being very, very loud. Whatever you're saying is in a very loud tone of voice, possibly angry, depending on what it is you're actually saying. If you don't include a smiley face in it, then the odds of it being construed as anger greatly increase. I know a lot of people hate emoticons. They hate emoticons are the little smiley faces or sad faces or things you can do there. Um, but I think because we've lost the ability to communicate tone and good writing, sometimes those emoticons are kind of necessary now. Like somebody might say something and I'm like, wow, they're really mean, but they put a smiley face. It's like, oh, so either they're being passive aggressively sarcastic or they meant it to be nice. Look at that. Even
Yeah.
there, I put the worst construction on it. Like, I
Right.
can't.
Well, and I've found that I use those all the time. I always put smiley faces all the time,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
and to communicate. Sometimes I'll attempt to speak very assertively and really speak to a point, in a conversation with maybe a parishioner or so forth, and I'll say, hey, can you meet Thursday at 3? Well, if I don't put a smiley face, it almost sounds like I'm demanding that we meet at 3 o'clock, But if I put a smiley face, it's like, hey, I'm just kind of, trying to find out if this works. But I think you're right. Those motive cons, as annoying as they can be at times, they do communicate the emotion behind the words because, as you pointed out before, we're only dealing with the typed print. We don't know the emotions behind it, the
Mhm.
context. These words, the words that they're coming from. And so even some of the most insulting comments that I've received from individuals, where somebody maybe criticizes me, I can look at them and if they have a tenderness in their eyes and their voice, I can realize, hey, they're correcting me because they care for me. They actually love me, and they're trying to address something that I have failed in. And so then I can receive it not as an attack, but as a constructive criticism. But you remove those emotions from it and you put it into print, then then the fists come up, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Well,
really good.
I mean, we see this in general. We have writers that we recognize as good writers, and then we have writers that we know are bad writers, so we don't want to read. And the good writers are the ones who can, when they write, we feel like we're there. We're in it. And it is a talent, it is a skill. It is not something that everybody can do. And so I think that's something to keep in mind with the advent of social media, where everybody can write to each other in real time, all hours of the day. Not all of us are good writers. And it simply could just be, I'm not a good writer. And so I would, please give me a little bit of grace here because I just stink at communicating and writing. I'm better face to face. Matt, I think one of the reasons you put smiley faces and everything is because when you're talking to somebody face to face, you are smiling.
Mhm.
And that's just kind of who you are. And I think the principle of if I wouldn't say this in this way to this person face to face, maybe I shouldn't do it online, can be a good one. Unless you're just a jerk to people all the time. And I'm sure there are people out there like that too, where they're just mean, even face to face. So we can't help that. Um, yeah, but and in terms of guidelines, I think that's a good one. Knowing the trolls are out there. Trolls are those people who come to just argue and yell at you. You can't convince them of anything. You can't change their minds. Their agenda is to talk you down, to yell you into submission so that you just go away and they win. There are people out there where that's how they handle their online communication. That's their purpose in life. And if your page gets, or your profile or your group gets any sort of an audience going, those people will come out of the woodwork and they will attack you. Really? So the best advice there, what we say in the internet world, is don't feed the trolls.
Hmm.
That means don't respond to them, don't talk back to them, don't attempt to convince them. If this person is coming at you already riled up, already angry, maybe they're posting completely off topic on the post, maybe they're on topic, but they're just yelling at you, engaging them in that medium is not, well, I won't say never, but it's almost never effective. You know, you're never going to end up with a productive conversation where you're helping to talk this person down off the limb, because they're just angry and they're mad, and it may not even be you. They might just have picked you as the target that day that they're going to, you know, shoot all their arrows at. So
Hmm.
don't feed the trolls. They are out there and they will find you.
Right, right.
Just go to the LCMS page. You can see them. Every time we post on abortion or marriage or anything like that, they come out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing where they're just
Well, and
yelling at us. They
I
hate
think
our
there's
stance for the truth there.
And I think there's an etiquette too. I mean, if I can insert into this, that
Yeah.
I've had many trolls that have come against me, and both you and I are involved with social media and different things like that. And I've had
Hmm.
trolls that have come against me, and I've noticed other individuals when a troll can come at and attack, that what the temptation can be is to meet that same tone with the same aggression, and then without even realizing it, you sink to that level and you become a troll yourself, almost where you're engaged,
Mm.
and then the witness of the Christian is now ruined too, because now a person may be coming along. They don't see the initial start of the argument. All they come and they see is this feed that's blown up, and then oh, look at Pastor Richard. He's being an absolute jerk to them. Look how
Yeah.
ruthless he is, and they don't catch the context. And so I think it's really important to even in our responses, not to feed them, and if you do respond, to respond with kindness and humility and gentleness and so forth. And there's times to speak firmly. Yeah, I mean, no doubt
Hmm.
about it. There's time to speak,
Yeah.
times to speak firmly, but always to treat the other individual with respect. I think, even if you're not respected yourself, I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
is huge.
And it's legitimate if somebody is being genuinely abusive, if they're swearing, if they're using profanity, or in the case of the LCMS page, if they're promoting Islam and trying to get you to convert, you can delete those comments. You can block those people from the page. You can, get them out of there. There are times when it's legitimate to just say, you know what, we're not going to give you this platform. You're out. And so be careful in how you use that, because the more you do that, if you're not wise in how you do that, you'll actually shut down good conversations as well.
Awesome. Oh,
Oh,
there. Are
did
you there?
you lose me again?
I lost you again. Yep. So I was
Oh
doing my fill
man.
in. So
Good
so
times. Are we back now?
yep, we're back. So I'm wondering if that's a connection here in Gwinner. So
Could
so
be.
yeah.
When did I cut out?
Well, we were just kind of finishing up on the trolls a little bit, and not to
Okay.
feed them, and then the etiquette of being courteous and respectful back, regardless, because of the
Yeah.
witness that we have. Just kind of.
I did want to add one
Okay.
thing onto
Yeah.
that too, because I think I don't want people to hear me saying that you just need to let these people do their thing. Um, if somebody's being abusive, if they're swearing, using profanity, if they're preaching, heresy, false doctrine, we get people on the LCMS page who will try and convert us to Islam. It is legitimate to block those people from your Twitter, your Instagram, your Facebook, and just say, you know what, this kind of behavior is not allowed, and we're going to block you entirely. So there are ways to make sure that sort of stuff doesn't happen. If it's somebody who they just seem to be having a bad day, feel free to warn them. Hey, this is not appropriate behavior for our page. But you don't have to put up with it. But at the same
Right.
time, you don't want to also delete every comment that disagrees with your page's stance or your account stance, because some of those can really lead to good, solid teaching moments. Maybe not. Excuse me. Maybe not for the person that disagrees, but for those people who are watching, who
Right.
will see, hey, here's how Pastor Matt handles this objection to the faith. Here's
Hmm.
how he teaches it. Oh, hey, my friends at school are saying the same thing. Well, now I've got an answer to give them the next time we're in this conversation. I've learned something from it. So don't be afraid of disagreement online, but do feel free if they're being abusive, swearing, profanity, that sort of stuff. Feel free to say, "That's it.
Mhm.
You're out of here."
Yeah, there's been a couple times. I'm not to reveal all my secrets, but there's been a couple times where I've had some online debates, and Serenity, my wife would say, "Well, why are you engaged?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not engaged from my perspective because I know they're not going to convince me, and I know I'm not going to convince them. But I also know that on my social media Facebook account, that there literally, could be up to 1,000 people at one time watching this conversation and learning from it. And so it's more how do you handle the conflict with integrity and respect, and also to present a good Christian confession in the midst of a opposing point of view. And
Yep.
so there's that side of the things as well as you're pointing out. So it's not necessarily engagement that you are having, but those that are watching as well. That can be a good teaching or catechesis time. Yep,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
To pull us along here, a final question, two questions here. Um, there's a question here, where can we go to learn more? And you said that you have an article coming out in the next Lutheran Witness, is that correct?
Yeah, that particular article, it's about how to have good, productive discussions. So that's it gives some guidelines for that. One of the resources I like for basic tutorials, also letting you know what's out there, what's coming, what kind of changes are happening, is socialmediaexaminer.com. They got everything from your basic 101. I'm just starting a Facebook page. What are things I need to know? How do I do a Facebook group? All the way to, hey, I'm doing live video twice a day on my Facebook Live. How do I go about doing that? How do I use these tools? So they've got everything from that very beginning all the way up. I'm going to start blogging as well on the LCMS site. LCMS.org/Peter Slayton will be where my stuff
Okay.
will be. And I'm going to cover some of these topics more in depth and give links to additional resources too. So I have a couple articles I need to finish up so that they're out by the time the Lutheran Witness article drops, because it mentions my blog too, which is currently empty.
Okay, nice.
So yeah,
So
yeah.
if churches are interested in learning more, obviously they can track you down, on Facebook, or contact, individuals that you work
Mhm.
with there for help or suggestions and so forth. They're more than welcome to give me a message here too as well. And
Mhm.
but basically, to kind of synopsis, what I'm hearing is that social media is definitely a wonderful platform for communicating the gospel and keeping people plugged in community and catechesis and so forth. It's not something that replaces face-to-face, but it's something above and beyond that can be used from that perspective.
Mhm.
Did I kind of capture our conversation
I
there?
think so. Yeah, I do want to add too that we've actually put together two documents here in the International Center, tips and strategies for social media, and we cover the various ones too. So just send me an email or call the church hotline here, and they will get that out to your congregation as well. So we've put that
Okay.
together for others to use. But yes, I would say that's a pretty accurate synopsis there.
Great, great, great. I think we could keep on talking for the next 20, 25 minutes here, but we're kind of at the
Except we
end of
got a
the
meeting
time
here in
slot.
about
And
9.
yep, yep. So we're kind of at the end of that time slot. So
Yep, yep.
I think we're going to kind of close our conversation down here. So we've been talking to Peter Slayton, the LCMS social media manager. Is that the
Yep,
correct
yep,
term?
that's
Yep,
it.
social media manager at the International Center in St. Louis, Missouri. He's not only a dear friend of mine, but also a very, very competent and wonderful guy who is working behind the scenes with all the social media for the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. So I would also encourage anybody who's watching, go to the LCMS, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, on Facebook and Twitter, and make sure to follow and like those pages as well so you can receive all the posts. And one of the things that Serenity and I did, my wife and I, is we made sure to set the LCMS posts every time we open up our Facebook, that they are the ones that come first. And so we
Oh,
put them
cool.
as a high, so every time we open it, we're getting the news. And so every time I open up Facebook, it's the first thing that comes up on my page is going to be, the LCMS. There's an option on there to have that as a prominent feature, and I found that so valuable to keep informed not only on the news, what's going on in the news from this Missouri Synod perspective, but also all the devotions and so forth that go with it. So yeah, keep up the great job, Peter. It's wonderful, wonderful resource. And also encourage the rest of the churches in North Dakota District to consider ways in using social media for the aspect of revitalization of the churches in the North Dakota District, for communicating, for the expanse of the gospel, for evangelism, and so forth that would be happening in your communities. So with that, Peter, we thank you for being here, and we thank you so much for your expertise and your feedback.
Hey, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure, and enjoyed talking with you, Matt.
Great, wonderful. And next month, we will be planning on being back here for another Google Hangout. And from month to month, we are doing different hangouts pertaining to the planting of churches, the evangelization of the gospel in the North Dakota District. And on the other side, we are doing these Google Hangouts for the revitalization of churches. And so we're kind of bouncing back and forth between these two topics. And so until next time, this is Pastor Matt Richard from Gwinner, North Dakota. And on behalf of the Task Force of Church Planting and Revitalization of Churches in the North Dakota District, we are signing off. Thanks and God bless.